Hi, this is Ellen Fleming. This video is about the U.S. federal debt and what is driving the increase. This was completed for Data 620, Section 940 in the fall of 2018 for Professor Carrie Bean at University of Maryland University College. In Figure 1, we are going to look at the U.S. debt from 1940 to 2017. In 1940, we had a relatively modest $50 billion debt, and it maintained that level for quite a while, but then you see it rising, and by 1980 it was $909 billion. And then we really see the rate begin to climb. And by the time we reach 2016, we are at 19.5 trillion, a very large increase, over 2,000% since 1980. Then if you look at the forecast indicators, you'll see that we have a projection of 29 trillion with a range of 24 to 35 trillion. What makes this even more concerning is that this does not include the latest tax changes that are expected to reduce revenue and increase our debt even more. Next, we're going to look at debt as a percent of GDP, gross domestic product. Many economists believe that this is a better way to measure debt because it measures against the power of our economy. So if we look here, you'll see at the end of World War II, we had 119% of our gross domestic product in federal debt. Obviously, that was during a wartime footing. So then we see that a strong decline to a low in 1981 of 32%. But then it begins its climb, has a short dip during 2001. We see it hit 55%, and then it starts climbing again. Now, we have a forecast of 116% via the trend line, although the forecast has a very wide range from 161% to 60%. So this really isn't that helpful. We do see that the average has been around 60% over this time when you look at all the peaks and valleys. So why has our debt been increasing? Well, here you need to look at spend and revenue and the deficit that it's created. For many years, our spending and our revenue stayed fairly much in lockstep. Spending would rise, but revenues would rise. But then we started to see a bit of a separation. This causes an increase in the overall debt. We did have a short period from 97 to 2002 where our receipts actually exceeded our spending. But that fairly quickly ended, and now we see larger and larger and larger gaps. And this is why we have our debt piling on. Now, it wanted to look at whether the population growth, how it related to the spending and the revenue. So if you look here, you see that our population growth and our revenue have fairly closely aligned with one another. You see a dip here in revenue because of the recessions, these two recession periods. But by and large, we've seen spending roughly at a pace with population growth. But here we look at revenue, and spending, and then you'll see that while population growth obviously is modestly increasing, we're seeing a great increase in the spending. And this is, again, part of the problem. We're seeing that spending is increasing faster than it should. Now we're going to look at what are the three largest federal budget items, okay? Defense started at $818 billion in 2013 and rose to $821 in 2017, and that's a very modest 2% increase. So that's really not a lot. We look at healthcare, however, and healthcare is primarily Medicare and some Medicaid expenditures because the federal government does pay for some of Medicare. Here we see it went from $856 billion to 1,130 billion. And that's a 32% rise. So that's a big rise in that portion of the budget. Those are big numbers. This last one is pensions, which primarily is made up of Social Security. And here again, you see it rising from 870 to 1,006. That is about a 15% rise. So these items, these two in particular, are at the core of driving our increased spending. And with our revenues not keeping pace, you see why our debt is increasing year over year.